Welcome back to Weekend Express as we continue to having this conversation with regards to Kenya being the pillar of peace. And with me is Daniel Juma, Executive Director, Global Peace Foundation, Kenya. So before we went to the break, we were talking about the need of the region coming together and having a single monetary power. But let's scale this even further. Africa coming together, having no borders, that means having a single passport that works across the 52 countries in Africa. Just how important is that, and how strong does that make Africa in terms of negotiating for better space at the table with the West and other nations?
It's a no-brainer that when we come together, we can negotiate better. It also demonstrates our own respect for ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why common currency, we start with an East African common currency is long overdue. Look at the Kenyan shilling right now, against the dollar, almost 120 shillings. And there's no sight to that changing anytime soon. If we had a common currency, I think we would be able to compete against the dollar, against the Chinese currency, and against the EU currency. The same thing, if we are able to encourage, and I'm happy right now, the passport that we have is kind of really an East African passport, but we need to go further and let the AU negotiate, for an African passport, so that we are able to travel within Africa. We are able to do business within Africa, and we eliminate the need for intra-African visas. It is so sad that years after independence, Africa is still, and I'm happy that the other day, South Africa, which was the main culprit in this matter, when I want to go to South Africa, it takes me almost 5 days to just apply for a visa. This happening while, and I must really be thankful. President Uhuru Kenyatta, on his second inauguration, he actually made an offer, to African countries that they'll be able to get visas on arrival. So I think it takes courage, it takes strength, for African leaders to be able to negotiate, and have this issue sorted out. And I'm happy that President Ruto, when he was inaugurated, he was able to convince South Africa. Ramaphosa was here, and they promised to limit, to get rid of visas to South Africa. So within Africa itself, there is completely no reason, there's completely no rationale, for Africans to impose visas on our African citizens who want to travel, who want to do business within the region. And once we do this, I think then the other nations, treat us with more respect, because then we are not, just look at, for example, the Africans crossing, the sea, dying at sea, just trying to go to Europe, and yet the continent, as you know, continent is the richest continent in the world, the youngest population in the world, and yet our people are dying trying to cross, going to Europe, because they have made their continent, their countries better. If Africa can have self-respect, develop our countries, make sure that issues of human rights are well handled, democracy is well handled, we are not fighting within ourselves, we are not killing each other, we get rid of the wars, then we will have those countries coming, to invest in Africa, coming to do business in Africa. Look at what China has done. China is involved in the scramble for Africa, and it was able to dislodge Europe and other countries, in terms of investment in this region. Look at the infrastructure investment. But right now, of course, this new administration is trying now to balance, not just to get China, but also to get the Western investors to come on board. So it all starts with our resolve as a nation, as a continent, get rid of the visas, let us work hard, let's have a common currency, so that we are able to project our strength as a Pan-Africanist region. Yeah.
And as we go outside Africa now, we see President William Ruto has been out there meeting delegations from across the world.
Yes.
Recently, he was in South Korea, and he met with the leaders there. They talked about investment opportunities in Africa, taking advantage of technology sharing, the same with Kenya to be specific, and also getting 120 billion shillings from them that will be used towards several other initiatives here. Just how important is it for the president to now go beyond, say, China? He's now in South Korea. He's talking big about going west, that is the UK and US. How important is it for our country to just expand our hands and embrace everybody?
The original foreign policy, when President Kenyatta, the first President Kenyatta was in power, we came up with this non-allied foreign policy of our nation, where we were friends of everyone and not enemy to anyone. So, and I think we have successive presidents have been able to embrace that policy, where we are saying, we deal with you as our friend. We don't care whether you are enemy of the other person. And this is one of the reasons why, of course, we were able to maintain friendship with the West, which is our traditional partner, but also be able to do business with China. We are able to do business with all countries. I think this is very, very critical. The last administration of the Kenyatta administration was, of course, more heavily inclined to China, but of course maintained friendship with other nations. I'm happy that President Ruto is now opening up, not just in terms of looking his policy. I've been a proponent of Korea. I've lived in Korea for quite a long time, and I understand, the Korean nation. We share a lot in terms of rapid development, in terms of growth. So if we want to learn anything, in terms of growth, resilience, then Korea is a better place to look. Because as they keep saying, 40 years ago, Korea was just like Kenya. But today, Korea is very, advanced technologically, to the level that now it's able to give aid to countries, other countries through KOICA. And that's why I think the president's trip to Korea was very, very critical. Getting, reaching out to that country. It's a country that has high level of democracy, high level of discipline, governance. We're talking about a country. The immediate former president, the one who came here in 2016, Park Geun-hye, is in jail for corruption issues. So in terms of accountability, I think there's so much we are able to learn from Korea, and I'm happy that President Ruto went there. We have something in Korea called Semaulundong movement, the New Village movement, where the people were able to come together. If it's to build a bridge, you come together, you put your resources together, and you are able to do it, as a people. And that's one of the reasons why in 1997, when Korea had the IMF problem, the people of Korea, they sold their jewelry to be able to bail out their country from the IMF. And so these are the lessons. As much as we get loan, we're getting loan from China, we need also to get lessons, to learn from them. We say, I saw even in the museum when I visited Semaulundong with the former Prime Minister, Koreans had grass-thatched houses, just like us. They used to make, flour, traditional, like my grandmother used to do that. So if we think that they just developed miraculously, then we are not getting it. But so in terms of lessons, I'm happy that this was one of the major, foreign, trips that the president has made. And it is very, very, very important that we project our strength as a trading nation. One of the things that I keep saying that, there's a lot of potential in terms of trade. For example, I know that we are one of the biggest producers of coffee, but Korea buys a lot of coffee from Brazil. So it's important for these high-level delegations so that we are able to open up these kind of restrictions in export of coffee. Korea buys a lot of avocado from Philippines. Why can't we be able to sell to Philippines? Korea buys Kenyan flowers from the UK. Why can't we be able to sell directly? And that's one of the reasons I think this trip was very, very important. As much as we are getting aid, we don't always need to, to always beg, but one of the, and that's a part of the pillar of the economic and commercial diplomacy that we have, is that Kenya needs to encourage friendship based on respect, based on mutual respect, and based on trade. And that's one of the reasons why, to bridge the gap between Kenya and Korea, I'm happy that the president was able to encourage the Korean parliament to open up restrictions so that Kenya can be able to trade with Korea, so that we bridge this imbalance. We can be able to, Korea buys a lot of labor, by the way, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh. You know, this negotiation, I think he was able to urge Parliament so that we, instead of sending our workers to Saudi Arabia where they are being mistreated, let us send our workers to Korea, you know, in an organized manner where they will be treated with respect. You know, human rights issues are very highly, you know, encouraged in Korea. And so I think this trip was very, very significant, and I'm really, in terms of moving forward, Kenya as a country will continue projecting its strength as an economic powerhouse in the region, and of course right now in the region, a military powerhouse. But what they're doing, what the government is doing in terms of projecting ourselves diplomatically is very, very good news for Africa, and we'll be able to open a lot of ways, you know, for our people.
And when you talk about South Korea, we understand how big they are when it comes to technology.
Yes.
Some of the greatest electronics we have come from them.
Yeah.
So then how do we have this exchange program? Because we also know that Kenya it's called the Silicon Savannah. You know, we are the home of technology. So how do we have this exchange program so that we get to learn from them, come invest here,
yes,
and they get to learn from us on what we can also do to change what they're doing there?
Yes, I worked for the government of Korea in the Korean Trade Center in Nairobi. So I know that they're very, very big in technology. One of the advantages that we had of when I was working there, of course, when China was coming into this market, you know, it was able to have higher leverage because of the cheap prices that came from China. But in terms of high-end tech, Korea was key. You know, and that's why companies like Samsung, LG were able to come into this region. Right now, as we are talking, we have Korea, you know, Institute of Science and Technology, KAIST, which is now involved in the Konza City. Konza City is mainly funded by the government of Korea through Korean Bank, and I think this is one of the ways which we are able to, you know, to learn, have these exchanges with Korea. I'm happy that during this trip, the Minister for ICT, Mr. Walo, you know, he was able to accompany the president, and I know that the government of Korea has been really, really good in terms of sending delegations, you know, to be able to have exchanges with in Korea through KOICA. I've seen Kenyan civil servants going, you know, to spend some time in KOICA to be able to learn. I've met so many government officials in Semalundong, learning how they developed, and I think this is one area where, in terms of mutual cooperation between the two countries, that Kenya is able to actually be able to learn a lot and encourage those companies to come and invest here. Let's get the car manufacturing companies, Daewoo, Hyundai, Kia. Right now, if you go to Korea, not just now, even before, you know, Korea was able to, in terms of even their manufacturing, you know, how they empower their SMEs. So big companies like Daewoo, Hyundai, they give out the tenders to manufacture spare parts. The components of the vehicles are manufactured by their SMEs. Like what we call here their Juakali industries. For example, the bolts, you know, whatever is making that. So that then the nation is able to benefit, rather than importing everything, the nation is able to benefit. I think if they're able to bring some of those investments here, then we can be able to learn through these exchanges. We are able to send some of our SMEs to be able to learn how to be able to make some of those small components. Then we can be able to also create employment for our youth. So usually, you know, national policy, you know, informs foreign policy, and I'm sure that the national policy of this administration is about the hustler. They need to create employment for the hustler movement. And that's one of the reasons why when you see President Ruto was in Korea, he was talking for the hustlers, trying to create employment for our people, but on a mutual respect basis, not just asking for aid, but also letting our youth go there to work and be able to earn that. And as they earn, they're able to contribute, of course, to the development, the labor needs of the Korean people. As I told you earlier, they import a lot of labor from other countries, from Philippines. So these are areas where I think we are able to measure up, to them and be able to bridge the gap between our two countries.
And I agree with you. This conversation definitely must continue. Thank you, sir, for appearing on Weekend Express. We continue to see how Kenya can harness its position as a haven of peace, expand our wings, and just quote everybody, because at the end of the day, it is Kenya that we want to grow and be friends with the other nations. Thank you, sir. Now, the UDA party has held its party primaries in areas whose seats fell vacant after their elected leaders were appointed to the cabinet. The by-elections are scheduled for early January next year. The party primaries were conducted in